Okay, welcome to the Stampscapes Art Lab, I guess we'll call this. This is an experiment on a piece of half-page black matte cardstock. Now this is a technique that I've done before with this white pigment ink on it, but I didn't like the results of the impressions that I used over the top of it because they just blended in with the background and they were barely visible. I think that would be good for certain types of I don't know, atmospheric kind of looks or, I don't know, feels, I guess. But it just didn't work in terms of visibility and having a decent amount of contrast. Okay, so I'm trying to apply this white pigment ink. I'm using the Brilliance white pigment ink, but you can use any white pigment ink that you want because this is a matte cardstock and it'll absorb, say, your oil-based types of pigment inks just fine. But what I'm going for is I'm going for this gestural type of look, okay? Now I'm going back in over the top of this because I got real blobby in terms of the applications with the white, and I want to even that out. So the good thing is that we have black pigment ink too that we can go back in and kind of remedy kind of some of the rough applications of that white ink because it stands out really well against that black. So I'm just going back in with the black, and when you go back in with the black, it just appears like it's some more of the paper. So you can just kind of go back and forth with your black and white ink to get that background the way you want it to look. And what I'm going for is I'm going for this kind of wispier, kind of wind-like, gestural type of foundation, in which to stamp my trees over the top of. Okay, now I wasn't satisfied only with this texture. I wanted to get a deeper looking texture on it, so I'm applying some white pigment ink here in the form of the splatter painted Dr. Martin's white opaque watercolor paint. And one of the things that you'll see me do here is I go back in, well, not here, but a little bit after I stamp my imagery. It became a little bit too busy with that white ink. Re-inked my black pen. I'm going for some of the very bold spruce tree large impressions here. And one of the things I was mentioning on the video, the full-length video, is that these trees, while they're wet, stand out a little bit more, but when that ink dries, it will really blend into the background. And that's one of the reasons why I thought black against just that white, wispier background doesn't work. It just doesn't stand out enough. So I thought we would go in the opposite direction and try white over the top of those black images. You don't have to put in those black images, but I think it gives it a little bit more depth than just going with, say, white trees over that background. It kind of creates a foundation for these other images on top. Okay, going in with the white pigment ink again. Trying to vary my impression height and distance in between the trees. Okay, and keeping in mind that I'm going to be stamping in some other imagery. I didn't plan this one out too well because I wasn't quite sure if I was going to stamp some more imagery over the top of this with silver. Okay, I didn't know if silver would look good. Now see that when I hold that up, it's like that background is just so busy with that splatter painting because that white opaque ink really stands out, that we splatter painted on there. So I'm going back in and I'm just blacking out some of that in that wispy kind of motion. So that really kind of mellowed it out and it made the background a lot more, I don't know, graceful, I guess. It was just too busy before. So like I said, in the video, the full length one, is that you can go back and forth between the white and the black continually, okay, until you get it right. Okay, now this is where I decided, okay, I think I am going to go in with a couple different trees, just those two trees stamped in multiples in the background. I thought didn't quite do it for me in terms of variation. And I thought, okay, if we're going for variation, why not? This is the Stampscapes Lab, which is how I see all of my experiments. I see them as experiments. And I figured silver is going to stand out against this background much more than white. But when I stamp that out, that looks like a white impression in most lighting, okay? So if you hold the paper up with certain types of lighting against it, the silver does reflect. It's more reflective than the white because of that metallic element or aspect to it. So I really liked how those trees stamped out in silver because, like I said, it blends in like the white that's in back of it. It just looks like a more opaque white, but at certain angles you get a little bit of an extra treat with that reflective quality to them. Okay, going in with a quote stamp here. It just, I don't know, this scene really needs some kind of a focal point. There's more dominant trees in terms of the taller one, closer to us, stamped in silver, but it's still pretty subtle in terms of, anything that's really eye-catching, you can land, your eye would land on. So that quote stamp goes in there, and I stamped it in the silver because you want your text usually to stand out against the background pretty well. Now look at those stars up there. They're all pretty uniform in terms of that splatter pattern. So one of the things that I'm going to do, and another thing that I did off screen after I finished this was I went back in and added some stars in silver, but I'm just going to do it in the white right here. This is a really fast card. I think this card would make a really great folded card too, where you have trees in the foreground or on the front of the card, and then you can have some trees in the back of the card. So this is really, it's really I think we can categorize it as a quick card. And I think a pretty dynamic quick card. You have your kind of real fluid hand applied textures in the background with that white pigment ink. And then there's a lot of depth just with the use of 3 different colors of ink stamped in a certain sequence from black to white to silver like that. I don't know, maybe you can even stamp black over the white and silver and have even more depth. But that's an experiment for a future video. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.